What is the most Karen thing a Karen has ever done to you? Story 1. When I worked at the Home Depot, a Karen told me that she didn't want any black men to install her flooring. I was in charge of arranging her order and told her that we don't select which individuals exactly will install her floor and that she'll get who she gets. She has a fit about it, demands white installers, and asks to speak to my manager. I'm so glad she did because my manager's name was Dwayne and he was a really big black dude. It turns out she didn't want to speak to the manager. Story 2. Asked for my manager's personal cell phone number to complain that I, 7 months pregnant at the time, would not carry a refrigerator up to her second story room, rather than just accept an upgrade for free because she didn't want to unpack her stuff. She refused to believe we had rooms without fridges and that I was just being fat and lazy. When I refused to give her the cell phone number, she asked for the corporate's number. I wrote it down on a sticky note with a smiley face. She came down later and asked to move rooms. I made her pay the difference. Story 3. She told me I couldn't work on my car in my own garage at noon, because she didn't want my fast-looking car to influence her sons to be hooligans like me. Story 4. When I worked at a bakery, Karen bought a chocolate cupcake and ate half of it. Karen then asked if she could return her half-eaten chocolate cupcake, not because she didn't like it, but because she wanted to exchange it for half of a vanilla cupcake. Like most bakeries, we did not sell half cupcakes. When I asked if she wanted to purchase a vanilla cupcake, she became offended. Story 5. When I was working retail, this one woman had a big bag of coupons. Most of them were unusable because either they were expired or they were duplicates. She berated me because the system was rejecting most of the coupons. She called me stupid amongst other names, telling me I just wasn't doing it right. Then, as a typical Karen would, she asked to speak with my manager. My manager came and asked what the problem was. The woman ranted about how incompetent I was because I didn't know how to scan a coupon. My manager looked at the coupons and the coupons were the problem, not me. My manager bitched out the customer for being disrespectful to me and told the customer to leave the store. Story 6. That I needed to leave the gym because I made her son feel like only fat people go to the gym. Story 7. One day while I was manning the registers with a few other coworkers of mine, I had a massive nosebleed right as I was finishing a transaction. I grabbed a tissue and quickly excused myself to run to the restroom so I could try to get it to stop bleeding. This meant that I couldn't say goodbye to Karen and give the little spiel about how I was oh so grateful for her shopping with us. Anyways, after about 10 minutes, I was finally able to get my nose back under control and headed back to the registers. I saw her waiting to the side with a scowl on her face, arms crossed over her chest, the whole 9 yards. She proceeded to scold me about how rude I was for not saying goodbye. After I apologized and explained that I had an unexpected nosebleed, she told me I should have tried holding it in and that the customer comes first. Story 8. I was working at my job as a cashier at my local supermarket. We were swamped with people. I had at least 7 people waiting in my line. One of my good friends from high school was in my line and I talked to him as I was ringing up his stuff. After he left, I welcomed the next lady in line and asked the usual stuff: did you find everything okay? How are you doing, etc. Before I could get a word out, she asked to speak to my manager. Apparently, I was rude to her for not including her in my conversation with my high school friend. She didn't even chime in or anything, and I have never seen her in my life. Fucking Karen. Story 9. My sister-in-law is the biggest Karen I've ever met, complains in almost every restaurant we have gone to, but this one time they were moving house and my bro asked me to help. I was staying at their place for the delivery truck that was to arrive early in the morning. We were having drinks and my bed mattress was on the living room floor. At around 1:15 a.m. I said I think I'm going to go to bed. She replied, are you kicking me out of my own living room? Not realizing she is crazy, I joke, I guess I am. She said no one does that, and even though she had finished her last drink, made herself 2 cups of tea. She didn't go to bed till after 2:30. She told me the next morning she stayed up to show no one tells her what to do. Story 10. Came up to my register and asked for the price of a protein bar. Every item in the store had a physical price tag because we didn't have scanners at the register. I took it from her, flipped it over, and let her know it was $2.49 before tax. She asked me how much the case would be. Normally we did discounts for cases, but they had to be ordered ahead of time, so I started explaining we couldn't do a discount unless. She cut me off aggressively and hissed, I didn't ask for a discount. So I typed in $2.49 times 12, added tax, and told her the final price. She stared me down for a few minutes before asking me to get my manager. Once my manager arrived, she spent literally 10 minutes tearing into me, describing me as the least helpful person ever, talking about my bad attitude, complaining about how awful and rude I was, etc. I was working nearly full-time and commuting to a school over an hour away 4 days a week. This lady took the time out of her day to break me down to the point I started crying. Thanks, Karen, I still remember you. Hope you enjoyed your fucking protein bar. Story 11. I deliver appliances for Best Buy. We had a woman call and complained that her fridge was not pre-cooled before it was delivered and that she had to wait for it to come down to temp. No one in the office was prepared for that one. Story 12. I was working at a Christmas theme park. On Christmas Day, there was an extremely long line waiting to play. It starts to rain, so I close the game. 5 minutes later it stops raining, so I reopen the game. A woman that was in the line before it started raining comes to me and starts complaining to me because she has to wait in line again. While she is arguing with me, she lets go of her kid and her kid leaves. She finishes complaining to me and goes away, then comes back after a while to ask me to play a message through the speaker so her kid will come back to us, and also tells me to get my manager. My manager comes and she tells him that I lost her child. He asks me what happened and I tell him what actually happened, and her reply was, "I let my kid talk with you, so it is your fault I lost him." My supervisor informed her that I am not responsible for any kid that doesn't play, and the parents are responsible for their kids. She gets mad, says whatever, and throws me all the tokens she had purchased. It was €30 worth of tokens. My supervisor called security and 3 dudes escorted her off the theme park. Story 13. Worked at a grocery store and a coworker put a 99-cent sticker on my shirt. We were 2 of maybe 5 employees, so we were all good friends. Everything is funny when you gotta pass time on a shift, so I just left it there. Some woman came through my line and asked me why I had a sticker on my shirt, and I just kinda laughed it off. She asked if I thought it was funny, and I was like, not really, but sorta. She asked if my coworker put it there, to which I responded yes. She told me she was going to speak to the store owner cause it was disrespectful to behave that way at work. She told me to call my manager, and I did, but he was a super cool guy and knew this lady was a fucking idiot. She talked to the store owner and my manager about firing me to no avail. Story 14. This random lady that lived in my neighborhood said I couldn't bike in front of her house without wearing a helmet because she was afraid of getting sued by my parents if I were to fall off my bike in front of her house or something along those lines. I was like 8, told her the street wasn't her property and rode away. Didn't really look back for a reaction. Story 15. I worked at McDonald's. Country club looking Karen came in with her daughter and ordered a nugget Happy Meal with 3 cups of caramel dip. I apologized and let her know we discontinued the caramel dip, which resulted in an instant meltdown. The kid threw herself down on the floor in an absolute screaming tantrum, and Karen was screaming at me that we do have caramel dip and I'm obviously keeping it from her. Then the accusations of me, a 17-year-old, purposely trying to starve her daughter. Honestly, the kid could benefit from starving a bit. She tells me I've ruined her day. She's a regular customer but she's never coming back. Where's my manager? You know, typical Karen stuff. The manager eventually came out and just grabbed a sundae cup and filled it with a couple of pumps of caramel, and Karen gave me a smug look and flipped me off. Hey, if you like the video so far, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video for more. Story 16. I was a supervisor at Cost Plus World Market. A Karen comes in one night pushing a cart full of obviously used throw pillows and asks to return them. Of course, she has no receipt and instead wants us to just look her up in the system. Except she refuses to provide her information for us to try to look her up. She starts yelling at my cashier, and that's when I stepped in to tell her very politely and calmly that she either needs a receipt or needs to provide us with her name and phone number. She starts screeching and screaming about how we're assholes and she'll get us fired and blah blah blah, and then she demands an apology from the president of the world. I'm certain she meant the president of World Market, but in her bleached hair fury, she said the president of the world, and I barely held it together as I calmly offered her the corporate feedback number. She wouldn't take it and instead walked out of the store still yelling and without her cart of dirty pillows. She returned about 20 minutes later, quietly apologized, and took her pillows with her. We never heard from her again. Story 17. Tried to return a top to the store I worked at 6 months after it was purchased. When I said there is a time limit on change of mind returns, she tried to tell me that was against the law. When I correctly pointed out that the law referenced faulty items, she tried to tell me her fat ass not being able to fit into it was a fault of the garment. When I told her she could try her luck with corporate, she stormed out only to storm back in later to ask for my name to add to her complaint to the ombudsman. Story 18. I worked at a coffee shop where a woman came up to me to complain that her lattes weren't filled to the top. I had seen her husband sneak sips on the walkover, but I wasn't gonna say that. So I gladly offered to remake both drinks, but she said, I don't want you to fix this, I just want you to know I'm disappointed in you. Story 19. I worked at a home improvement store for a while in college. I was a cashier in the garden section. This woman pulls up on the curb in a no parking zone. Grabs her fertilizer and soil. After I check out, she goes fucking ballistic that I didn't help load her car and she was going to report me to managers. Due to company policy, I wasn't allowed to, but other employees were though. Her face mole was shaking and everything. Over a bag of soil that weighed under 10 pounds and a handle of fertilizer. Story 20. I was standing on a crowded train and a pregnant Karen started screaming at me because she had nowhere to sit. Yes, to me, the person who was standing, because there were no seats. She started screaming like it was my fault that there were no seats. Story 21. Working retail one afternoon and here comes Karen with a return. At first glance it's no big deal, just coming in to return a shirt. She walks up to the register, hands me the receipt to start processing and we exchange a pleasant greeting. I take the shirt out of the bag to examine it and it is beyond disgusting. There were brown sweat stains all over it, from the pits to the stomach to the shoulder. It looked like whoever wore it rolled in mud or some nonsense. I proceed to tell Karen that I cannot return the product because it had clearly been used and that only unused and resellable items could be returned. Karen threw a fit, started screaming at me and accusing me of calling her a liar and whatnot. I hold up the shirt and point to the brown pit stains and say, "Karen, can't you see this stain? Oh, man, did that make it worse." She continues making a huge scene and demands to see the manager. News flash, Karen, I am the manager and I'm not budging. After 20 or so minutes of complaining, she finally leaves saying she'll be complaining to corporate and getting me fired and blah, blah. Fast forward a few days. A guy walks into the store, finds the first store associate he can and immediately asks for me by name. Here we go again. Anyway, my associate brings the guy over to where I'm standing and I politely greet him. The guy spends the next 10 minutes apologizing for his crazy wife Karen verbally abusing my staff and me a few days prior. You can share your own story down in the comment below, and thanks for watching the video.